So, we need to talk about the state of the world after World War II before we can talk about the Cold War. So, the Allies, as of 1945, had been an alliance between the Soviet Union, Great Britain, and the United States. Well, turns out that all those allies, especially Great Britain and the United States, they kind of hated the Soviet Union and their government, their brand of communism. Now, the only reason they really get in an alliance with them during World War II is because both sides hate Adolf Hitler and his fascism pretty equally. So it was more of an alliance of convenience than of want. So we all know that Adolf Hitler and Nazi Germany had taken over just about all of Europe during World War II. Now that Adolf Hitler's out of the picture and Germany's kind of not the country it once was, that leaves a power vacuum in just about all these countries. Stuff on the western half of the continent is going to have more influence put into it by Great Britain and the United States. So these countries are pretty much going to become democratic and capitalist systems again. Now, the Soviet Union is going to start spreading its influence into countries that were occupied by Germany in the east. So Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria all become communist states. They all become part of the Soviet Union. All right, so this is big old Mother Russia, and these are states that fall victim to Soviet Union's communism. So now there's a clash of ideologies. Now, let's take a look at Germany. I need you to note that Germany here has two different colors in it. We have a West Germany and we have an East Germany. Let's get into that for a minute. So, Germany was a bit of a weird situation because it had been the enemy combatant of World War II. Now, since it was the main enemy, all the major superpowers wanted something different out of the country. Soviet Union wanted to sweep in and install communism. United States, Great Britain, and France wanted to come in and install democracy. They kind of had to meet literally in the middle. So Soviet forces are going to occupy most of Eastern and Central Europe and the eastern portion of Germany. Germany is going to be divided into East and West. In the East, you're going to have the Soviet Union in control, and they're going to install communism in that part of the country. In the West, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be Britain, France, and United Kingdom in charge, and they're going to install democracy. Okay. Now, what gets really confusing is that the capital city of Berlin is also going to be divided up, and that's going to cause a problem. We'll get to that right now. So this is what Germany is going to look like. So we notice right here, this red color here, that's the Soviet Union. This is a communist system of government in this part of Germany. So East Germany basically becomes its own country, and West Germany becomes its own country, but it's led by three different countries. But the big difference is over here is communist, over here is democratic, because United States, France, and United Kingdom are all democratic countries. Now, take a look at this little splotch right here. Okay? So that's the capital city of Berlin. Now, you notice how it is in the communist Soviet part of Germany, but it's divided up itself. Now, that's because the other Allied powers didn't want communism to be this type of government that is prevailing in the capital city. They wanted to have a way to get maybe capitalism and democracy in there someday. So It gets a little tricky in Berlin navigating which side you're going to be on. So think of these countries having a little oasis inside the giant island that is communism. And this is the poor divided capital city of Berlin with the evil communists over here. So shortly after this takeover of the city, the Berlin Wall goes up. And this is exactly what it looks like. If you know where to look, you can get a chunk of the Berlin Wall in gift shops. Now, this wall is going to go through the city. Now, it's a literal concrete steel barrier. Families got cut off, and people were living in different like capital cities now. And if you wanted to get from east to west, you had to go through a checkpoint. Now, you had to have a really, really, really stinking good reason to get to the other side. You had to have some sort of family member, you had to have a job or something. Because if you tried to cross over this wall, it wasn't just barbed wire and steel and concrete. There were guard towers, dogs, landmines. This thing was constantly patrolled because the Soviets didn't want people escaping from the communist side to get to the capitalist side. The whole heart of the Cold War is going to be the ideological differences between these two countries. So that's Germany. Now, Japan is the other country that had been pretty messed up by World War II. Well, I guess you could say Japan had something going for it. It was occupied by only one country, where Germany had been occupied by four different countries. So, since America had been the one dealing damage mostly in the Pacific, we pretty much decided what was going to go on in Japan. So, of course, America is going to spread its ideals of government. Japan's going to adopt a democratic form of government, and they're going to resume self government shortly after and become a strong ally of the United States. To this day, Japan is one of our best allies in the world. Now, America had to find a way to try to stave off the communist influence that was trying to creep its way into Eastern Europe. So we developed something called the Marshall Plan. So, as you can imagine, World War II devastated the continent, and there wasn't lots to work with besides rubble. So, the Marshall Plan becomes the name of the game. So, the whole thing with the Marshall Plan is this was America providing massive financial aid to Europe, and the United States government's thinking, well, if we can, I don't know, maybe we're not going to call it a bribe, but if we go in and give them money and fix up their countries, then they'll be less susceptible to falling into communism. And it kind of worked. American taxpayers are having their tax money used to prop up Europe so they don't fall to communism. So there goes America throwing money at the problem again. Now, we had to also think about, does the world ever need to get into World War again? And the usual conclusion was that it wasn't a good idea to get into another world war. So there's going to be an organization created called the United Nations. Now, this was formed to create a body for the nations of the world to try to prevent future global wars. This organization is going to get countries together to talk about their issues before it becomes a thing. They're also going to have different countries in charge of different branches of things. For example, there's a human rights thing, there's a security council that monitors global conflict. America, the United States, is going to become one of the first five key members of kind of being in charge of the world's security. And we supplied a lot of troops and money to the Security Council in case stuff ever went awry. Now, this is going to kind of become about containing communism, but that's a different story for a different day. this United Nations was created to prevent future global wars.